Good morning. Welcome to the second day of Plone Conference 2025. We start with our first talk this hall. It's Rob Gietema, and he talks about Nick, the nearly headless CMS.
Hello, welcome. So I guess these are all the people who didn't go out partying last night. Always good to be the first slot on the conference. On the day. Anyway, so I'll be talking about Nick, or subtitle when Backend meets Frontend, but as Erico stated yesterday, it's better to have your talk named like this, right? State of Nick, so there it goes. So a bit about me. I'm Rob. I'm in the Plone community for, 15 years, 20 years maybe. I've been working on a lot of different projects, created Volto, responsible to blame for TinyMC integration, and other stuff. So what is Nick? Nick is a nearly headless CMS. It's built with Node.js, so all the Python people can boo now, that's fine. But it is RESTful API compatible with the Plone REST API. So that basically means a drop-in replacement for your backend. So you can use Volto or any other frontend which uses the current contract of the REST API. So why the name Nick? Anyone has a clue? Some people already know.
It's a nickname.
No. It's a nearly headless CMS, so there's a Harry Potter reference there. So you have nearly headless Nick. There you go. So because the CMS had to be nearly headless, there's one view which is not headless, which is just the HTML page, and it renders this one. So if you add Nick at the backend, you get this fine ASCII art thingy. So why did I start this project in the first place? First of all, it's fun to build. I like building stuff, and if I like to build it, and if people want to use it, that's fine, and if people don't want to use it, that's fine as well. That's how Volto started, and at some point people liked it apparently because they're using a lot of people using it now. Another big reason is Plone has a great architecture, and it's really hard to learn all the internals of how stuff works, but if you have to rebuild it and build everything the way Plone does it, and you really have to dig more into the internals to see how is actually this permission system working, and how is this done, and how is that done. So it's a really great way to learn how the internals of everything works. Plone has a really great REST API. The whole contract and everything and all the documentation is really awesome. So I really like that part. So I started building this as a proof of concept during the Tokyo conferences. As some people already know, I usually like hacking during conferences, so during talks I'm just building stuff. That's why this happens. So most of Nick is actually built on conferences during everybody else's talks. And I started out just to see how far I could get, and then I added more and more and more until it's almost fully fledged, actually. And one of the other big reasons why I started it is that the backend and the frontend are now in the same language. So it's all using JavaScript or TypeScript, which should be easier for people to not learn both JavaScript and Python. So there's a website, obviously. This is a look at it. You can have a look at this fancy sales pitch. I'm not sure if everybody looks at the sites, but anyway. We have an online demo which we'll show later locally, and there's extended documentation. So make it bigger. So all the endpoints and all the installation documentation, everything is available. So if you want to try it out, you can. And of course, if you want to contribute, you can do so as well. So what will I cover in this talk? So as I said, it's a bit about people. Nice shirt. So I'm gonna have a look at what the architecture of Nick looks like. I'm gonna show some performance testing in regards to Plone. Give you some hints on how you can build your own website using Nick, and there's another thing which Pierre and I are planning on doing a lightning talk on Friday, but we haven't built any code for it, so that's what we're going to do tomorrow. So we'll see, but how you can integrate it, 7, especially in this case, with a backend. So, what does the architecture look like? So, looking at the issues with Plone, big disclaimer there, my opinions, so don't take my word for it. So there's a lot of legacy code. A lot of legacy code to maintain. That means that we have to, well, there's probably, the more code you have, the more possibilities of bugs you can have, and the more work it is to maintain. Another big thing, for me at least, I'm not a deployment guy, but when I have to run or set up or deploy any of those environments, I think, for me at least, it's hard. Other people are a lot smarter than me, so maybe it's not easy, not so hard for them, but for me it is. For the rest, it's quite a complex stack, right? So you have to learn, you have to know quite a lot of different things. You have to know in Python, you have to know Zope, you have to know in generic setup. As you can see, this will be bigger. CML, page templates, REST, YAML, JSON is in there, CFG files, INI files, there's Markdown in there, JavaScript, Webpack, CSS, less, XSLT, maybe not anymore, but there was. Build out, no, we have UV now or whatever, it's fancy at the moment. KSS, we used to have, we don't have anymore. Portal skins, if you're using Classic, right? Anyway, so there's a lot of technologies which you either have to learn or be familiar with. So what I did in Nick was to slim that down a bit. So we have JavaScript and TypeScript for everything which is code. We have JSON for everything which is data. And we have Markdown for everything which is documentation, and that's all. No more languages, just those 3. Or, well, if you count JavaScript and TypeScript, there's those 2. Storage, so everything is in Postgres, so it's a relational database, NoSQL, and I'm using 2 libraries there to Node.js libraries to connect to the database. So Next is like the low-level database layer, and Objection is an ORM basically on top of that. Blobs are stored on disk, fairly easy with UUIDs, matching them to the database entries there. I tried storing them in Postgres and it works, but it's just slower and more complex, so I like to keep things simple. So when comparing those 2, right, so we have Plone versus Nick. Language, as I said, Python. Nick uses Node, meaning JavaScript and TypeScript. Storage, CDB in Plone. You can do rel storage, obviously, but in Nick you can actually inspect the database and actually see all the different fields, and for rel storage that's a bit more complex. So looking at the lines of code, quite a lot, huh? Quite a lot to maintain as well. Any guesses on Nick? 8800. Yeah, so it's quite a lot less code to maintain.
Did you include Postgres source code?
No.
But you didn't include the ZDB code?
No.
Also?
Yes.
Ah.
Did I? No, I didn't. It's just Plone, the Plone specific stuff. Yes. Yes.
Fair.
Yes.
Fair.
Actually, I didn't do it. Guido did this for a talk about a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Then let me check. Okay.
Yes. So performance, that's also important, I think, right? So I had a look at the performance. Big disclaimer, this is tested on my machine. It's probably not the most scientific way of testing it, but at least you get some order of magnitude of how stuff works. I've used Plone 6.0, so it's a slightly older version, using Nick from a year ago as well. I'm using Postman, so I'm testing API calls only, so no UI or anything, just the REST API calls to see the performance there. So when looking at the reads, they're actually pretty similar. So this is the result from Plone and from Nick, it's almost the same. So it's no error rates, quite a lot of requests per second, and pretty good response time. So in reads, both systems perform almost identically. Looking at writes though, it's a bit of a different story. So this is creating a page, 20 concurrent users. The average response time in Plone is about, as you can see, 243 milliseconds, and we have an error rate there of 2%. So not all requests come through. Looking at Nick, same setup. We have 59 milliseconds response time, and 0% error rate, which is, as you can see, slightly better. Then bigger difference are here. So when we do both operations, it's a big difference. So as you can see, maybe you've already noticed if you have a large customer with a large site and you have like your main navigation item and you want to delete it or you want to rename it or any of that, sometimes it times out, or if you have a large site, it will definitely time out. With Nick, depending on how big your site is, but it will maybe eventually time out as well. But as you can see here, if you delete a page with 1,000 children, in Plone it takes about 2 seconds, and in Nick 0 to 1 second. Looking at 10,000, which is like 400 milliseconds versus 29 seconds. Renaming takes even more time because then you have to re-index everything, right? So with deleting, you're just deleting or getting rid of all the items. You have to do some indexing, but less. With renaming, you have to do a lot of re-indexing of all those items and all those children. So in Plone, with 10,000 items, it takes 83 seconds, which will most likely time out. And in Nick, it's 4.4 seconds. Right. So how do you actually build a website using Nick? There's a lot of stuff to cover because Plone has a lot of functionality, and I had to build it in Nick as well, so I had to implement that there as well. So first start up to create a database in Postgres, as I said. Just a database with super safe password. You can choose another one, obviously. These are the rules to set it up. I have a Yeoman generator to create your own setup, so it's more or less the same as Volto, that you have your dependency, and then you have your own project with your own custom code, your own extensions there. And you bootstrap the project, so we'll fetch all the packages and everything which is needed. Then we have config. The config has some settings, basically where my database is, what port I want to run to, where my blob directory folder is, some users and some other settings where the front end is located, etc. And profiles, which I will get to later. Then we have the front end part. So if you want to put Volto in front of it, almost the same as you would normally do, you just point the proxy to 8,000 in this case, or if you put it on 8080, then you don't even have to change anything in your Volto config. And then you can start your instance. And then we have a demo. Slightly bigger. So this is Volto, basically, on top of Nick. So as you can see, the theme is slightly different from the normal theme, but for the rest, everything is exactly the same. So if I can just edit the page, you would even, I think a normal user would not see any difference because the whole interface is the same, because the REST API has a contract, and if you fulfill that contract, then you can put anything underneath. So not much different there, so not much to show, if you're familiar with Volto, that is. So how do we do any of the settings, or how can we actually apply all that stuff? So we have profiles. There's a lot of naming similarities to Plone. And profiles have all the settings in there. So all the information, all the metadata, all your content types, all your groups, all your users, all your permissions, everything you want to do is in there, and everything is in JSON. And you can create it on disk and insert them with a seed command, which will apply all the profiles and will reset the whole database and apply the whole profile again. So if you want to do development, then you can just easily reset your whole database with all the initial content for fast development if you mess up your data. So there's also versioning profiles, so you can have like a default version of your profile, but you can also, same as we have in Plone, have different versions and upgrade to a specific version. So you just create a version number there, add some JSON files for that specific version, and it will override those versions. You can check what the current status of the profile is, and you can upgrade all the profiles there, so you have all the latest and greatest settings. Then creating content types. You can do so in the profiles as well. So we have JSON files where we can create content types. Those are just JSON schemas. So as In Plone, we also use JSON schemas for almost everything. Well, in the back we use something different, but eventually in the front end they will become JSON schemas. And in Nick, everything is already JSON schema, so then doesn't need to pay any conversion. So what does a JSON schema look like? It has a title ID, it has field sets, and it can have some properties. So in this case, I made a content type called schedule, if you want to make like a conference website, for example, and it has a property year. It is folderish, has a workflow, and has a title, etc. And you can add talk content items, content objects to it. So a talk is title, description, and the title is required in this case. So very similar to what you can do in Plone. Next up, behaviors, also coming from Plone naming. So you can apply behaviors to your content types. These are behaviors, well, most of the behaviors which are already in Nick, there's more of them. Also pretty similar if you recognize them from Plone. So you have a double core, obviously, you can have folderish, you have a nav route where you can actually make subsites or multilingual websites. There's versioning and some functionality. So some add fields, some add some functionality. So when they add fields, it's fairly simple. You basically create a behavior folder with a JSON file in there, and the JSON file is also a JSON schema, which will be extended into the content type. So you don't need to do any coding there. It's just specifying a schema, and it will be applied to the same content type as well. One thing Nick can do in Plone Count is nested behaviors. So you can also have a behavior with such behaviors. That's quite handy if you want to have like doubling core, maybe which has another behavior applied to it and then have it in there. So you can just specify in the schema, you can say this schema also has these behaviors. Then there's behaviors which add functionality, so they don't add any fields to it, but add functionality. For instance, ID title from year. So that means that this behavior will set the ID and the title based on the year. That's a field in the schedule content type, which you added, and it applies it to the title and the ID. You specify the behavior, and then in code you can provide some functionality there. So it's you have the document class. That's the one which is there by default, which has some. It's like the base model of your document. It has some methods, and all these methods can be overridden or changed or added to that specific document class. So this one you don't have to change, but if you want to add any behavior, so in this case ID title from year, you're basically overriding the setID method, and instead of passing in some ID or whatever, you just say this.id, and then it will do schedule dash and then the year, which is entered into the original. And for title, in this case, the same, but then without a dash and with a fancy capital S. Initial content. I have to go a bit faster, I see. So initial content is pretty similar to Git concept, or like the initial content of just JSON files with Plone import export. Just JSON files. The naming scheme, there is dotted notation. So you can see this is your root folder, and then there's a sub item, and it just has all the JSON data in there. You can have versioning in there as well. You can add redirects as initial content, so it will redirect to a specific UID or a specific path. There's a conversion script, so you can actually run Plone import or run export import. I know naming is messed up because there's all different versions of that package. But if you use Plone export import, you can export content from Plone, and you can convert that to initial content in Nick and then import it into Nick. So permission system in Plone, that's the good part, right? So what do we have in Plone to set up permissions? Well, we have permissions, we have roles, which have permissions, we have groups, which have roles. We have users, which can have roles and can be part of groups. We have local roles, which is a user in a group has a role on a specific part object on the website. Then we have local permissions are inherited from the parent, or they are not, which can be set or unset. as I said, and we have workflows which also apply at different states to objects. And then we have stage of those workflows which set permissions per role. So that's quite a lot. And that's actually quite nice. I see some pictures taken.
Normally this takes about 4 hours to train people to explain.
Yes, I can imagine. And then we have transitions, and the transitions also have permissions. So there's a lot of stuff to be done. Yes, I have 1 minute left, I see. So I'll go through really fast now. So permissions, you can set them in JSON. Basically, Nick has all of this. With permission in your project, you can specify roles in JSON as well. We have groups, we have workflows are also, everything is defined in JSON. Then we can have in the talks, we can also set those permissions there. We have sharing, which are the local roles. We have vocabularies, I will skip those one.
Just say what you don't know.
I think I'm all of it. Anyway, catalog, same as we have in Plone, we have indexes and metadata. With all that, you can specify all the different indexes and metadata in your JSON project there as well. I will skip this one. We have events, so you can also do on add events to change stuff in your content object if you want to re-index the parent, for example. Control panels, the same. They're also JSON schemas, so it's also just specifying a JSON schema, and you have a control panel, and it will be there. And you can fetch all those settings with using simple API calls to fetch those. Internationalization uses more or less the same system as in Plone, so we have POT and PO files using getText. It will eventually generate JSON, so you can actually use it in the backend. There's a command to extract all those strings. Translation is done like this, so you basically have, if you do in the request, there's an IETN method, and if you put anything in there, it will be extracted and it will be translated. You can also do translation in JSON. By default, JSON doesn't really do any IETN, but I added the extraction method. If you specify the field and add colon IETN next to it, then it will extract it and it will strip out the IETN tag when you actually use those JSON files. See, there's even message context. So Mac pointed me to a feature in the getText which I was not aware of, which is message context, and it's now added to the extractor. So it will also provide the context where the translations are. Testing is there. I'll skip it. Docs, I will also skip that part because I have not much time left. So, how to integrate with the backend? We're gonna have an awesome demo on Friday. No pressure now because we have to finish it.
You mean we have to start it?
Yes, start and finish. Yes.
Just say.
So there's something new called Backend for Frontend. Victor mentioned it as well in his 7 talk. Which means that you can actually do your backend calls in your front-end, which runs on your backend. Okay, it's hard to understand. Anyway, so normally when you integrate with a backend, we do API calls like this, right? So we have a post, in this case, to create a content item, and we do a REST call, and we get some information back. In the backend for front-end setup, you can do in your front-end, you just have a method. So you don't do a call, you just do a method. So in this case, I have a client object, and I do, instead of the API call, I do CLI.create content, and I pass in some information, and there's some magic done on the server rendering side, which will fetch the data for me, so I don't have to do any any REST API calls myself. It's just JavaScript interacting with the system. In 7 uses more or less the same setup instead, and then we also have the client, but the client will do the actual REST API call. There's another network layer in between, and in Nick, there's no network layer in between, so the backend will directly fetch it from the database, so it's less overhead, so most likely more performant. But we haven't done any tests because the code is not there. So the big thing, AI, right? So everybody wants to have AI in the system, so I couldn't resist of adding it as well. Just put the label on there, right? No, it's not how it works. I have a talk after lunch in the auditorium at 2, which I will go into a lot more detail than I will be doing now. But there's quite a lot of different AI features added to Nick. Embedding, searching, AI assistant, and all that stuff. But I can't do that in half an hour, so we'll do it in another talk. But there's basically an endpoint where you can query an LLM, and you get a response from your LLM. That's the really short version of it. But as I said, at 2 o'clock I will do the rest. All right. Thank you very much.
We might have time for one really quick question. Anybody?
Or slow question.
Timo?
Do you see any quick wins where we could move current Plone backend towards what Nick does, which is far more modern and easier to make a possible transition at a later point easier?
I don't know. I mean, I think, as I said, the REST API is already a contract, so it's basically a drop-in replacement.
No,
I'm not sure if you can.
JSON configuration, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah, we could. I think. Yeah. I mean, the whole. If it's like the initial contents, for example, we kind of use it in Content Creator and in other projects. That could be like standardized, and maybe also content types or any of that stuff. Yeah, it could definitely be. Yeah. Yeah, so we have the same, not only the same API, but also the same configuration base, basically.
Yeah, standardizing stuff that make lots of sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Mac.
Oh.
Thank you, Rob.